Bones, The Secret Society. It's so secret we can't talk. You were both in Skull and Bones, The Secret Society. It's so secret we can't talk. You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code?
I wish there were something secret I could manifest.
322, secret number?
We're talking about a global influence, folks, when we're talking about this Order of the Skull and Bones. We're talking about a global influence.
The Skull and Bones Society is founded in 1832 by 15 seniors at Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. They establish a secret society with rules and rituals that remain unchanged to this day.
Well, secrecy has always been extremely important to Skull and Bones, but there's been a schizophrenic kind of aspect to it. For instance, throughout the early 1900s, the New York Times would often publish, sometimes on the front page, the names of the new Skull and Bones initiates. And the Yale class books would, up until the 1960s, publish the names of each class of Skull and Bones. Still, even though their identities were known, what they did inside the tomb was still supposed to be top secret.
The tomb is the Skull and Bones Clubhouse, a 3-story, almost windowless brownstone on High Street.
When I was an undergraduate, and I lived next to it, it's a very spooky kind of place, and you could project all sorts of fantasies about what sort of spooky and horrific things were going on inside, just from the sense it gave, of the intimidating kind of aura it had.
10 years after he graduates in 1968, Ron Rosenbaum sets out to penetrate the confines of this secret society.
You would hear all sorts of stories about the initiations that went on, the kind of horrific psychodramas that they would put the initiates through. You were supposed to be able to hear screams, blood-curdling screams coming out of the tomb of Skull and Bones. And there were tales of strange sexual confession encounter groups, guys lying naked in coffins, wrestling in mud piles.
Rosenbaum attempts to interview the Bonesmen themselves, but most refuse. Instead, he gathers information from people close to the members, particularly girlfriends who have been given secret information, and some of whom have even been allowed inside. They describe an interior with all the trappings of a late Victorian Gothic fantasy. There is heavy, dark furniture, medieval armor, animal heads, and everywhere there are skulls and bones, including a skeleton bonesman called Madame Pompadour.
If you listen to what people have said who've had some experience of that secret society, the Skull and Bones, it is more than just a talking shop. It involves the worship of the skull.
A number of reports say that there are niches with human skulls, and whose skulls they are. They're supposedly the skulls of famous people, and there's one skull that was labeled the skull of Geronimo. The reason why skulls and bones figure so prominently in it is a kind of strain of imagery that dates back to Masonic societies in Germany, in which it was important for a youth to contemplate his death.
The Skull and Bones initiation ceremony is said to be held in April in the tomb's basement. One distinguished member serves as master of ceremonies. Once enrobed, he is known as Uncle Toby. The shortest senior is appointed Little Devil and dons a satanic costume. A bonesman with a deep voice is dressed as Don Quixote. Another is dressed as the college's founder, Elihu Yale. Still another is given papal vestments. It would all be rather funny if it weren't for the fact that among the former bonesmen are 3 presidents: William Howard Taft, George Bush, George W. Bush, numerous senators and ambassadors, industrialists like William Whitney, CIA agents, State Department officials, and publishing magnate Henry Luce.
For close to 2 centuries, Skull and Bones has produced the stewards and leaders of the American ruling class, the Eastern establishment, elite core of diplomats, spies, Supreme Court justices, senators, presidents.
The Skull and Bones Society seems to be particularly important for bringing American elite bloodline young people into the web.
The Order of the Skull and Bones, an intriguing, yet somewhat mysterious, but yet somewhat publicized, very powerful group or organization based at Yale University. So you got to go to Yale in order to get into this quote-unquote clique. But as we're going to see from the information we're going to present, we're going to see that, man, these guys have been doing it for a while. Okay? They've been getting it for a while, man, by using this group, this tight-knit group of folks that they use a network to bring individuals in. And when they bring individuals into the group, they look for individuals like mind, and then those like minds then combine their like mentalities to focus on particular goals. Politicians, the political parties, all of these things are organized gangs, just some gangs bigger than others. Alright? So, they figured out, as you've seen through some of the other shows that we presented, they figured out that because their power is in numbers, it's also good to keep the groups that you're going to be dealing with single, individualized, trying to promote individual acts and not groups, because if they got a group, then they can deal with you. But as long as they're individuals, you can always outnumber them by the sheer enforcement of how you plan to carry out what your objective is. We're talking about a global influence, folks, when we're talking about this Order of the Skull and Bones. We're talking about a global influence. Their hands reaching on every continent, with probably the exception of Antarctica, and you probably can include Antarctica for some reason, with some of the other projects going on similar, like the HAARP project. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with that. The HAARP project is a project dealing with the electromagnetic atmosphere on the Earth, and they use these different mechanisms to control different things in the environment. The Order of Skull and Bones, whose initiates fill the ranks of the global elite, the folks who control this whole big thing, folks. If Skull and Bones is Skull and Bones, the American branch of the Illuminati,